my friend and I would drive around and get high and listen to music. And he saw my
So that's the trick.
That is the trick. You know what I mean? Maybe not.
Maybe I got to start getting high.
You should, and listen to music. Well, the market crashed in 07, so it was pretty difficult for anybody to make any money. I think people were more focused on not losing money than they were on making money. It was a real difficult time. I just continued because then and now work is just such a huge part of who I am and what I enjoy. Almost like when I started, there wasn't really a choice. You just had to do it. Depressed, I mean, I don't know if I was clinically depressed, but it was just a really weird time because friends started fighting. You started losing friends. You realized some people were your friends because of money, etc., like that. So it was just a good eye opener for me. But yeah, there were some times it was really challenging, really frustrating, just in a lot of different areas. But at the end of the day, like, the one thing I had was like, man, I could wake up and go to work and try to make this happen.
Hey guys, welcome back to Driven Channel, and I'm here with a really special guest. This guy is one of my closest friends, cool guy. We work together, we party together, we make a lot of money together.
True.
And we're pretty damn close. So this podcast is this episode is going to be really important for all of you watching this because I have a lot of followers that are in the mortgage space and in the real estate space. And Chris Calderon happens to be, he's been top 2 mortgage lender rep in the nation for the past 4 years or a decade. You could tell us more about that. But Chris, first of all, welcome to the show. I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
I appreciate it.
I know you work hard, you make a lot of money, and like you're nonstop. You came in here earlier, you made calls, and then you have to get off of this pretty quick, go make more calls. You wake up at 4:30 in the morning. You do a lot of cool things. But Chris, can you introduce yourself to people that might not know who you are? That you're the top AE in the nation. But who is Chris, and why did you get into the mortgage space? And by the way, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
man. I'm so excited about this.
Thank you. Who is Chris? Chris is nobody. I just like a guy that likes to work hard. I've been fortunate enough that the profession that I'm in, I love doing it. I'm almost like a junkie. People always say, well, why do you work so hard, or you're always into work? And my dad, my father, he's a sculptor, and he's works on his art all day, all night. And I always say, if I was a musician, if I was an artist, etc., you wouldn't say that, right? Because we look at art as someone's passion. Well, this happens to be my passion, so I don't look at it that way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get tired. I mean, last week was a little bit of a tough week, so, I was happy to jump into that first vodka tonic on Friday night, but generally for most of the time, I just love what I do.
So you got into the mortgage lending space when?
In May 2nd, 2002.
And prior to that, what was your job, and how was your income like? And then when did you start? Why did you get into the lending part?
So prior to that, I've always been a hard worker, and I always tell this story, and I don't know if it would have changed anything, but I'll never forget, I was 13 years old, and there was this video game that I wanted to buy, and my stepdad was in the backyard, and his name was John, and I walked out and I asked him, I said, hey, there's this game, Super Tecmo Bowl, can you take me to the store and buy it? And my stepdad owned his own business, and he was like, well, I'll tell you what, come to work with me next weekend, and after Sunday, I'll guarantee you'll have enough money made and you could buy the game on your own. So sure enough, I went to work that Saturday, that Sunday, and as he promised, he took me to Montgomery Ward, and that's how far back I'm going. And I bought the game, and it kind of registered in my head. I'm like, well, shoot, if I come back to work with him, you know what I mean? Next Saturday and Sunday, I could buy another game, so forth and so forth, right? And that's just kind of how it started. And I worked every weekend up until I got in the mortgage industry. But the point being is, I'm not saying that if he would have just taken me about the game, it would have made a difference. But it instilled in me at a very young age that if you want something and you work hard enough, you could have it. And that was kind of it. And so I worked with family, you know, and that could be anywhere from sweeping to cleaning toilets. And so, you know, I kind of take that same work ethic and, you know, shoot, when, you know, I was cleaning toilets, I had some of the cleanest toilets in town. I don't think people probably walked in the restroom and probably didn't want to use it when they saw how clean it was. And I take that same approach, you know, you just whatever it is you're going to do, just do it to the hilt.
It kind of reminds me of my story, like when my dad took me with him to paint, and I went to this mansion in Bel Air, and he tells me, and I ask him, hey, Dad, well, why do you drive that old van? Like, why don't you get this red Ferrari? I don't know if it was a Ferrari, but it was a nice, beautiful red car.
Sure.
And then I tell them, like, why don't we live here? Like, why do we live in the ghetto? But as a kid, I'm 6 years old, so I don't know any better. I'm like, I'm thinking, like, my dad, he's crazy. Like, why do we live where we live and drive that van if we could have this?
Right.
So then he tells me it's not for us, because it's not for us, because, you know, we're Latinos. We're not expected to get there. And I asked him, well, how can we get that? And he told me, as a 6-year-old, if you work hard and you never quit, but I remember those two words, if you work very hard work, and you never quit, maybe one day you'll reach that.
Right.
And that, I don't know if it was that, but it kind of pumped me up, like kind of like that story that you said pumped you up. And I think that has that's a big reason why you work so hard. But so let's move forward. You get into the mortgage lending space, and that's, you said 2002?
Sure, correct.
So 2002. So when you join, are you killing it from the start, doing good, or how was that transition?
You know, I've been fortunate. You know, I could credit many people that had a hand in my success, from the two women that helped me get in the industry, to people who helped me along the way. I've been very blessed to have been surrounded by some really, really good people early in my career, in the mid part of my career, and even presently to date. So I've just been really fortunate. And I would say probably one of the biggest keys to my success is I've been able to build really, really good teams, right? And so for me, that's kind of how it happened. You know, I just took to it like a fish out of water. And the reason was I didn't have a safety net. You know, for me, you know, I had family members saying you aren't going to make it. Some of my friends were like, man, you're not going to make it. You'll be back. So I didn't really have a choice, right? So there was no safety net. And sometimes I think that's the best thing you could have, you know. Not to say if you get in this industry and you have savings, you're not going to be successful. But I think like anything in life, if you just have, you know what I mean, this one opportunity and you know, God forbid you should take a spill, you know, there's no getting up from that. And I think that was a huge motivator. And so out the jump, you know, I was learned really quickly, you know, you'd cold call brokers and they'd just be like, shoot, Chris, you know, I'm just looking for someone to return my call and just kind of tell me the truth of what's going on in the loan. And I was like, I think I could do that. And if you're going to pay me that, I'll do my best at doing that.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of how it was.
So lender rep means account executive for those
Correct.
of you that are watching this. So were you an account executive back then?
Yes. So I started off in loan setup, which was, again, you know, I just had a lot of really good fortune. And I started off in loan setup and I wanted to be in sales initially out the bat. And the two women that got me the job, they're like, look, man, just get your feet in the door, right? And, you know, we'll work something out. And so I started off in loan setup and it helped me learn the documents and, you know, learn some of the language of loans. I didn't have any sales experience, or at least I thought I didn't. I'll touch on that later. But, you know, it helped me learn some of the people inside the office. And so once I became an AE, you know, a lot of the underwriters, they were like, man, we got to help out little Chris, we got to get him going. And so they rushed my files and, you know, that was a huge benefit. But it was also a learning experience. One, it was kind of like that Karate Kid, you know, wax the floor, you know, wax the car, you know what I mean, sand the floor, paint the fence. But also it learned me in sales, it's not just about the selling you're doing with the client, it's the selling that you're doing internally with the internal staff, right? And that's really where some of the most important sales happens, right? You know, anybody could sell outside, but you got to sell the people that you're with, sell them, here's why we should do this loan. Here's why, you know, if you could stay a little bit later, you know, help them expand and open their mind. And I really think that's where a lot of people who do sales, they miss it, right? You not only have to sell your client, but you also have to sell the people that you're working with.
So how did you have that sales Was it an ability or was it a skill that you acquired? Where did it come from?
You know,
Because I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of AEs. Just like there's a lot of loan originators. There's a lot of mortgage lenders. A lot of mortgage brokers. Like thousands of them. In the tens of thousands. I don't know how many, but there's a lot. So why do you become number one, number two, number one, number two, and when there's so many other ones that can get started, they can't do good. Like, why do you become good so quick?
I don't know. I think, you know, there was this book I read, about 20 years ago, and the book was about jazz musicians in, you know, Los Angeles had a really big jazz scene in the 20s and 30s. And there was this one musician that a lot of the people in the book would talk about, and he had tremendous talent, right? But the one criticism that people had of him was he never turned that talent into skill, right? And I think there's a lot of talented people, right? You know, there could be talented musicians, talented painters, talented salespeople, you know, you name it, any different type of profession, right? But if you're not really working hard and turning that into a skill, right, you know, you're not really going to be left with much. You're going to be left with a lot of questions. Imagine if this person was consistent. Imagine if this person did this or that. Fortunately, sales, I guess, came naturally. I didn't know. It just happened. Like I said, I was forced to be good at it because I didn't have a plan B. And not that cliche, like just don't have a plan B or no safety net. I'm not talking about it in that way. Like I legitimately didn't have one, right? And so I think that just kind of forced me to do what I did.
How did you grow up? When you grew up as a kid, were you middle class, rich, poor, or did you ever get bullied? Were you ever insecure about anything, or were you just born, you turned 6 and you were like a rock star? Everybody loved you and nothing was hard. Like, how was your childhood? Because I think there was something that forced you to become good with people, how you talk, how you communicate, because people just don't turn into something special like that.
I don't know. I mean, I grew up really middle class. I mean, not.
You're Hispanic, right? Calderon?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
You're a
Mexican on my mom's side and Costa Rican on my dad's side.
Where do you get the blue eyes?
From my grandfather, you know what I mean? Knock on wood, because it's been really helpful. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's been helpful. But you know, it was a pretty uneventful childhood, I suppose. You know, I never do the, you know, I had it worse than others or this and that. You know, I'd wake up, eat breakfast, go to school, come home, eat dinner, do homework. I don't know. You know, when I was younger though, I did have a speech impediment. And so, you know, I had to work really, really hard to get that.
Yeah.
And even now and then, occasionally, you know, I still stutter and it doesn't bother me. It just happens. But I had to work really hard. And then coincidentally enough, I'm now in a profession where talking is my job, right? So there was that. And then, you know, growing up, I always had to, I never forget, you know, kindergarten, you know, you don't do shit when you're in kindergarten. You're coloring rhinoceroses and stuff like that. You're not really doing anything. But in first grade, you know, you're learning math and all that stuff. And it was just harder for me. And so I always had to work just extra harder just to keep up. And I'll never forget, you know, it was right when we were learning how to do addition, subtraction. And, you know, my mother had no patience and so she got really mad at me and, you know, was beating the crap out of me and dropped me off at my grandfather's house to just, I don't know, who knows why. And, you know, my grandfather had to wake up super early. He'd go to bed at 8 and wake up at 4:30 to be at work at 6. And I'll never forget, he you know, we're Mexicans, so, you know, you have to have a large supply of beans in the house. And he took a handful of beans and he put them on the kitchen table. And I'll never forget, you know, he stayed there late into the night and kind of taught me how to add and subtract. And, you know, and so the point I'm getting at is I think I've always had to just work a little bit harder just to keep up. So I think that just kind of helps me excel. So I just accept the fact that, you know, if people are waking up at this time, you need to wake up at this time.
Yeah.
And if people are staying at work till this hour, then, you know, you got to stay at work a little bit later.
Yeah, my mom taught me how to count with beans too.
Okay,
And now she's teaching my daughters how to count with beans.
There you go. It's all right.
So it works. But did you graduate from college, or did you what was your GPA in high school and college? Or if you went to college?
So primarily I was raised with my grandparents after a while. I'm sure, I disappointed my grandparents on a pretty regular basis when it came to school. And just like now, the subjects I liked, I paid attention, I did well. And then, like cutting frogs open and stuff like that, I was pretty indifferent about. And I'm just like, man, I'm not going to do that. Because it smelled, it wasn't like a moral thing. It just smelled bad and it was gross. So I think I was a very average student, A's, B's, C's. You know what I mean?
You never got like D's and fails?
I got some D's, but some F's. No, I mean, it wasn't that hard.
Did you go to college or no?
No, I never went to college.
Just high school.
Just high school. I knew I wasn't going to waste my grandfather's money. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when your first year as an AE, as an account executive, was 2002. You started as a
started off in loan setup, and then I think beginning of 03 was when I went into sales.
So 03 was like a full year of account executive. Yes. Do you remember how much you funded that year?
I don't remember, but I remember I was driving around, and my friend and I, we'd drive around and get high and listen to music, and he saw my W.
So that's the trick.
That is the trick. You know what I mean? Maybe not.
Maybe I got to start getting high.
You should, and listen to music. You know what I mean? You're going to hear certain things. You're like, man, I've heard this song 100 times. I've never heard that part before. I never listened to it that way. And I think I'd maybe made, maybe 200,000 maybe in that first year, 250, something like that. And I'll never forget, he shook my hand and he was like,
So your first full year, you made 200,000, more or less.
Correct.
It was same with me, 260K.
Yeah. See,
but I was a loan originator. You were an AE.
Yeah. See, Uncle Sam was taking half of mine. At least you were getting 1099. So yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole different topic.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that has pros and cons. But when 200,000, how much did that equate to fundings?
I
you don't know.
I was smoking too much weed back then. I don't know.
And that's when you had the long hair.
Yeah, that's when I had long hair, and it wasn't gray either.
And you probably had a lower split, right? You didn't have a high compensation back then because you were brand new?
No, the comp was pretty standard. It was like if you hit certain tiers, and that was kind of it. Yeah.
So the following year, 2004, did you have an improvement in income and fundings?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how long? When would you say was your breaking year when you just had like a killer year and you made more money than you've ever had?
I think 2003, and then I made more in 2004, and then I made more in 2005, and then I made more in 2006.
So what happened in 2008?
Well, the market crashed in 07, so it was pretty difficult for anybody to make any money. I think people were more focused on not losing money than they were on making money. It was a real difficult time.
Do you think that's key? Like if you focus on not losing money versus attacking and making more money, you think that's a difference maker?
Yeah, I think, had I spent more time in 2008 leading up to, the crash already had started to happen, but if I would have spent more time focusing on gaining more as opposed to not losing, I think that would have made a difference. But nonetheless, I learned a lot of lessons, and so maybe I didn't go to college, but that crash was my college.
Were you always like a very very good with money, meaning that you would save money, put money aside, like when you started, or did that start later?
I was a good saver. I think I was a good saver, and that helped me get through the tough times. Could I have been a better saver? Yeah, but I would imagine similar to you, and I'm sure you could relate to this. Nobody in my family had made that kind of money.
Yeah.
And no one in my friendship groups, whether it was my friends outside of the industry or within it, was accustomed to making that money. So I think everybody made a lot of mistakes. Had I been my own father that long ago, I think I would have given myself some good advice, but that's just not how it worked out.
So in 2008, did you run out of money completely, or did you get very close?
No, I didn't. I didn't get close, but there was definitely some lifestyle changes, for sure. But no, I was able to push through, and that was helpful. because I didn't feel the need to. I was still able to concentrate on doing sales without feeling like there was a huge dagger over my head. So.
And then your income, did it drop like by 50% or more?
Oh, shoot. Yeah. I probably dropped by 75, 80%.
Yeah. And I dropped from 260K to 60K.
Yeah. So
and when it dropped, did you keep working as hard as you were working before? Did you get shaken a little bit, or were you like, this is nothing, I'm going to continue to work hard?
Oh, no. I got shaken for sure. Did
you ever want to quit?
Yeah, I did. I was at my grandfather's house, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and things were just really difficult. And I remember mentioning to him, I was like, I think I gotta find something else to do. This doesn't seem to be working out anymore. And my grandfather was in the kitchen. By this time, he's retired, and so he's in the kitchen all the time cooking. He was a really good cook, and he kind of said something to the effect of, so let me get this straight. When the business was doing well and things were good, you were all about it. And now that things have gotten tough, you want to quit. And essentially I'm like, yeah. And he just kind of nodded his head and then kept looking out the kitchen window, which essentially was his, you can't quit. And so fortunately, because of that, I stayed in the business. But no, it was definitely, I was, kind of like in Super Mario when he'd jump on a turtle and, you know what I mean? Kick it down to, that was me. Yeah, I definitely got jumped on and kicked. Yeah, for sure.
When did you start seeing light again?
I don't remember. I don't think I ever saw complete darkness. I just kind of figured, and a lot of advice that I give right now is I just kept my legs moving, right? I just knew, you know what I mean? Just let me just stick to what I know. And, once again, I got fortunate again. I got surrounded by some good people, and that kept me going.
Did you ever feel like a little bit like, so when you felt like quitting, were you kind of depressed a little bit, or did you stay at home and not work for a little bit, or were you just still hustling and working hard, but you were just thinking about quitting? Some people, when, like, for example, right now, some people are like scared because they don't know what's gonna happen, and instead of working harder than last year, they work less because they get shaken up, and they're like, they don't know what to do, and they kind of pause. And some people, they're like, no, I got to fight back and harder. So did you kind of slow down and pause a little bit, or did you just continue?
I just continued because then and now work is just such a huge part of who I am and what I enjoy. Plus, again, almost like when I started, there wasn't really a choice. You just had to do it. Depressed, I mean, I don't know if I was clinically depressed, but, it was just a really, really weird time because friends started fighting. You started losing friends. You realized some people were your friends because of money, et cetera, like that. So it was just a good eye opener for me. But yeah, there were some times it was really challenging, really frustrating, just in a lot of different areas. But at the end of the day, like, the one thing I had was like, man, I could wake up and go to work and try to make this happen.
Yeah. So Chris, look, I'm gonna pull up my phone really quick, and I go to the Scotsman Guide. So for people that don't know the Scotsman Guide, that is what rates mortgage lenders, originators, account executives. Although they did stop the account executives, right?
Right.
But on here, like, if I go and check the latest results, you are number 2. I know the prior year you were number 1, and you're always you've been number 1, number 2 for the last 4 years. Here it says that your total volume was 1.5 billion.
Yes.
So 1.5 billion. This is 2020 numbers, right?
Yes.
So 2020 numbers, 1.5 billion. So that's total closed loans 4,092. Sound about right?
Sure.
So this is a big number. I don't know if people watching this understand, but this is like a lot of income that you're making.
Yes.
And I'm not going to get into the number, but it's millions of dollars. So am I close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you make a very well living. Now, my point is that you're like top 1, 2 in the nation. year after year after year after year, and you haven't slowed down right now. Like I see you, like we were having a conversation before, and I don't know how many what billions you are now, but I see you not slowing down, and there's a lot of people that have slowed down. What do you contribute that to right now?
Well, I think, right now, again, if we're going to talk about, overall what's happening at this moment, you really can't stop the bleeding, but you can try to slow it down. And so, I just say to stick to being consistent, and you just have to work harder now than you ever did before. We went through such an unprecedented, not unprecedented, but at least it hadn't been that crazy good for about 15 years, right? And so everybody worked hard these past couple years, right? But everybody has to work hard in a different way, right? You know what I mean? Things are getting tough, so you got to get tougher. So, I've been aggressively, adding new clients, right? Which was something I always did, but now I'm making it at a point, here's a goal. I've got to add this many brokers, this month, and this many brokers that month, and that'll equate to this many loans. And again, it won't stop the bleeding, but it'll slow it down. So I've been fortunate that, although there has been a drop in volume, it hasn't been as severe for me as it's been for some others.
And more or less, like how many brokers do you work with?
A lot. I don't know.
Like hundreds?
There's a Russian guy at our office, really, really nice guy. And like if I asked him like tomorrow, but just like a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. And do you take on, like for brokers watching this, do you take on any brokers? Or are you selective with the brokers you work with? Because the level of service, like to be number one, sometimes your time is very, very valuable, like all the time. And I know you value your time. So like let's say if a brand new broker wants to work with you, can they do that? And how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. You got to fill each other out. Sometimes, I've had brokers fire me, and sometimes I've fired brokers, right? So it goes both ways. Fortunately, I'm at that position in my career where, I could just say, hey, I don't really feel like working with this person anymore. And it doesn't have to be any nasty words or anything like that. Sometimes you just kind of drift apart, and they know and and vice versa, right?
Yeah. So you're the richest person, the wealthiest person, not on social media.
I don't know.
So like
about that.
we were trying to put your Instagram there, but you don't have an Instagram.
No.
So like I almost people you're almost like part of my Instagram.
Right.
If I put you on mine,
people know me more for that. Yeah.
But like I always talk about marketing, how important it is. But you've made it to the top without social media, or marketing, or do you market other ways, or how the hell do you become number one with no social media?
I just word of mouth. Word of mouth because of my mouth. Like I said, I just stay consistent at constantly originating. There's just certain tactics and things like that I use, but just staying consistent that way. I mean, it's. I like to liken it to an In-N-Out burger. Sure, the line's going to be a little bit longer. At the drive-through, the line's going to be a little bit longer. If you walk in the store, there's going to be more seats taken. But if you can just consistently do something well over and over and over again, like you'll build that following. And just building relationships. That's also been really important, is just building relationships, And like all relationships, there's high points and low points, but you just have to work on maintaining those relationships. And so obviously, I always encourage a lot of my clients, why aren't you on social media? Why aren't you marketing on social media? It's so crucial. But yeah, I don't do it. It's just not something for me. Like I just found just sticking with that old fashioned kind of approach works best for me.
Yeah. What do you like spending your money on?
DoorDash. I spend a lot on DoorDash. You know what I mean? Egg McMuffin and a hash brown will run like $24 in the morning. If I forget to go to the supermarket, which happens a lot. I don't know. I've been fortunate. I got a partner that I work with, and we've been buying a lot of properties lately, and we've been able to be pretty successful in that, and hopefully we have more success to come. And that's kind of it, just like boring stuff. You save money, you've got 401ks, you buy stocks and stuff like that. And then I like to hang out, buy cars, hang out a little bit here and there. So, that's kind of it. I like going to sporting events.
What's your favorite car that you have? You have quite a bit of cars.
I got a few cars. I don't know. I think the favorite car is like whatever I'm driving. Because then when I switch a car and I'll drive it for a few weeks, I'm like,
what car did you drive today?
I just drove my Hellcat today. It's got a big trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It does.
So you like big trunks?
Well, yeah. I don't know. Just if I got to throw stuff back there, which I never do, but it's just nice knowing that if I do have to throw something big, then I could.
You're also you're one of the most interesting people that I know. Like you also. You don't like watches or you don't, or because you have that watch, right?
Correct.
And you could afford any watch, but you decide to have a normal, I would call it a normal watch. Mm-hmm. So why do you have that? Why haven't you bought another watch, and why have you been wearing that watch for that long? Can you share that story? Because you told me that story.
Yes.
But I think it'll teach people a lot.
So, it's funny, right before I got in the mortgage industry, and I bought this watch for $450. And at that time, I thought I was doing it. $450 watch, you know what I mean? I'm doing it, right?
Because you're making millions, and you have a $400 watch.
It was $450.
$450. $50, yeah.
$400 watch. I can't wear anything less than $450.
And you had that watch since how long?
2002.
Since 2002, so 20 years.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So I bought the watch. I thought I was doing it. I get in the mortgage industry, and then, I first start working at New Century. That's where I started. And, you're seeing people that are fucking got Mont Blanc pens that cost more than my watch, right? Yeah. And, I just kept the watch as a reminder that, hey, man, there was a time where $450 was all the money in the world for you, And so it's just a reminder that, hey, man, just try to stay as humble as possible, And, secondly, it's more of a practical thing, but, if it's 640 on my watch, it's 640 on, you know what I mean, the $200,000 watch. But, everybody has their own vices, right?
Yeah.
But for me, this is more of just like a keepsake. And I'm not a really sentimental guy, but
you spend like 15 grand on dinners and night out sometimes.
Yeah. Maybe not dinner, well, dinner and the night. Yeah, if you combine, yeah. But, if I could take out some of my team members, if I could take out some clients and it's appreciation, it goes both ways. One, it's an appreciation, and two, it's to help, again, foster that relationship, you know what I mean? And, have some really good times as well. So, yeah.
So that's kind of, does that motivate you? Or is it more of a reminder?
It's just more of a reminder.
Yeah.
It's just more of a reminder. I don't think it's a motivator, but yeah, it's more of a reminder.
And you're also really cool. I don't think I met any other. Well, yeah, there's quite a few interesting AEs that I've met, but you like to have a lot of fun.
I sure
enjoy
do.
your life.
Yeah,
and you're very disciplined. Like I think. Can you share your schedule? Because I know Monday through Friday you're very strict and you don't get off your schedule. But how is Saturdays and Sundays for you?
So Saturday is going to be however Friday night was. That's really where it starts. However Friday night plays a big role in how Saturday starts.
So Friday night is when you start your relaxation mode?
Yeah, like whether I'm going to go out, whether I'm just going to grab dinner with a buddy and just grab a couple drinks, So that's kind of how it starts, Not to say if I don't party on Friday night that I can't wake up, or if I do party that I can't wake up early, might not wake up as early or as fresh, but Friday night and Saturday night and Sunday, to me, that's when I like to have fun, run errands. I always talk about this all the time. People are always like, man, every time I talk to you on Saturday, you always say you're running errands, you're doing this, you're doing that. And sometimes it feels good to be the customer. I think all week long I'm out there serving the clients. And so sometimes it just feels good to be the customer.
What's your schedule Monday through Friday?
Work
schedule.
I wake up around 4:30 in the morning, and I immediately go directly to the computer and I start pounding out emails and prepping the files and figuring out, okay, I got to talk to this underwriter or this account manager about this loan or this broker, etc. And then right around 6 o'clock, you know what I mean, I order up that $24 Egg McMuffin and hash brown, jump in the shower, get dressed, eat really quickly, and then start working. And then right around 7:30 is when I start making calls to people within the team. And then right around 9 o'clock is when I start returning calls or answering calls. And that's it.
And then you hit the field every day?
Every day except for Friday. Yeah, correct. Every day except for Friday.
How many phone calls would you say you make a day?
North of 100 for sure. Correct. Yeah. Because some days, I might have returned 120 calls. So there's 120 right there, plus any calls that I'm making that I got to reach out to somebody.
And you said you don't have time to work out.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't. I got to sleep. I mean, what do you want me to do? I'm not a vampire.
So you can't you can't wake up like 30 minutes earlier and have a 30-minute workout?
I can wake up 30 minutes earlier, but it's 4 a.m, right? So you figure if I've worked a 15, 16, 17
you
hour
can do
day,
like push-ups from your desk, or
could I do push-ups on my desk?
I think
Yeah.
you just don't like working out.
I would love to work out. You know what I mean? I would love to work out and get that oxygen in the brain, but that's not what happens. But sometimes on the weekends, I'll smoke a joint, throw my headphones on, and ride my bike at the beach.
That's a workout.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I'm sure you. I'm sure you do other kinds of workouts because you stay pretty lean. Like you don't. If you didn't work out and eat just McDonald's every day, you would blow up.
I try to eat healthy during the week.
Oh, got it.
You know what I mean? And then on the weekends is when I'll kind of, cheat a little bit. But during the week, I like to eat healthy if I can.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys that are watching this, do you think Chris really doesn't have time to work out, or is he just making an excuse?
It's not an excuse. I swear, guys, I don't have time. You know what I mean?
So on Saturdays, your errands, you don't. Have you ever thought of hiring somebody to run all your errands?
Yeah, I've thought about that.
That way you could do other things.
But I am doing other things. You know what I mean? Like
do you like running errands?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Like I said, sometimes it feels good to be the customer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And with being the customer, like, there's some things that bother me, and then it's like, well, it makes me think about my own business, and you might be doing that,
yeah.
And so you got to get better at it. So yeah, there's some lessons to be learned within that.
Yeah. So Saturdays and Sundays, do you work at all, or you don't work?
I work. So Saturday mornings, I like to work. Bang out some emails, work on some files, maybe early Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning or Sunday evening, just to be prepped. But usually, like on Sunday evening, I will sit down at the computer and get prepped. So when I start the week, I'm going in fresh with some momentum. I don't like to be feeling like I'm starting from behind. So yeah, generally that's what I like to do.
So Sundays, do you kind of let off the fun stuff to get ready for Monday?
Yeah, like right around unless we're at no jealousy, you know what I mean? Then unless we do that. But right around 4:30 is when I start to turn into a pumpkin. Like, yeah. And it's like, okay, let's slow it down and you know what I mean, ease in. So it's rare that I'll do anything on a Sunday night. It's pretty rare.
You're very structured with the way you run your life operation.
Right.
So Chris, moving to the economy right now, or our industry.
Right.
How do you see the mortgage industry right now? Do you see a lot of people getting laid off? Do you see a lot of mortgage brokers going out of business, mortgage lenders going out of business? How do you see that?
So, obviously we've seen some lenders shut down
quite a few.
At a pace that we haven't seen since '08. And I'm not talking in the same numbers, but we've seen a few go out of business within the past 4 to 5 months. We've seen a lot of companies do layoffs. We've seen a lot of companies, cut pay, cut hours. So we've seen a lot of that. So that says a lot. On the mortgage broker side, I've seen some mortgage brokers, let go of some staff members, and they're not happy about it. But it's just business. And when I say just business, I don't mean it in a callous way, but just unfortunately, that's just kind of how the numbers work out. And, begrudgingly, they had to let go of some people. So I've seen a lot of that as well.
How do you see production from mortgage brokers right now? Like how much have they decreased based on your experience?
It depends on the broker. Everybody's experiencing a downturn in their business. Like nobody's been immune to that, whether on the wholesale side, whether on the retail side. Like nobody's on an island to themselves, right? Everybody's experiencing it. What I am seeing I'm seeing a lot of offices or loan officers being consistently inconsistent. So you could have someone, for instance, have a great July but a bad August, and someone will have a bad July but a great August. So you're seeing a lot of up and down, right? You're seeing a lot of that. So as these questions get asked, I might be giving some answers that maybe some people don't want to hear, but I always say, I don't make the news, I just report the news.
How do you see the last quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year? Do you think it's going to easy up and rates are going to come down, or what do you see?
No, it's going to be really challenging. It's going to be really, really difficult. And I think this goes for everybody.
More than last quarter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because fourth quarter is generally a historically slower time of the year. And again, in volume wise, I've had some very fantastic Novembers and Decembers, right? Mm-hmm. But the originations always tend to be a little bit lighter because, you have people who aren't thinking so much about refinancing. You have people, borrowers aren't there thinking so much about purchasing. So it's always historically going to be slower. And, if you're slow right now, to anybody that's listening, anybody who's watching, right? If you're slow now, wait till December. You're going to be that much slower, right?
And January.
And January and February. I'm really thinking based off of the research and the articles and videos that I've watched, I think fourth quarter and first quarter are going to be tremendously difficult, right? I think it's going to be really, really challenging. Now, to what degree it's going to be challenging will depend on the individual and how they decide to approach it. But yeah, there's definitely some tough times ahead. Some tough times right now. I had a broker on Tuesday, and I've worked with her maybe about 5 years now. And she was around during the subprime crash, and she was like, Chris, she was like, I remember when that was happening, but I was still able to close a couple loans here or there a month. She's like, this is different because it's just outright stopped, right? And the numbers will get progressively worse. Like rates will continue to go up, right? Not because I'm saying it, because, Powell said it yesterday, right? He flat out said it. He didn't mince words. I don't remember how many times he used the word pain in the speech that he gave, but it's definitely probably half a dozen to a dozen times. So, he's setting the precedent of what we're looking like, Like, remember when you went to the bank and your mom or your grandfather or whatever took you to the bank and they were like, this is how you're going to behave when we go in there. And if you don't behave this way, this is what's going to happen when we get to the car. Yeah. So Powell kind of did that. Like, there's going to be pain,
Well, you deal with a lot of brokers. Like, how bad have you seen some brokers like have you seen some brokers just completely with no deals?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's some brokers that, the cupboard's really thin. And I've been just really, really consistently just reminding them, just keep your legs moving, keep pushing, keep your legs moving. Try some different things that you haven't been doing before. If you're not on social media, try that. If you stop going to open houses, start going again. If you stopped cold calling realtors, start calling again. So, you give them different tips, but yes, some brokers are feeling it more than others. Sure, absolutely.
Because refinances are completely stopped almost, right? Or do you still get a lot of refinances?
I still get refinances, but I mean substantially less than I was getting a year, let alone a year ago, 6 months ago, right? I think refinances are down 91% year over year, right? And with rates continue to go up, that number is going to get even lower. So so refinances are down. Fortunately, purchases have always been a large part of my business, so I don't think I've seen as much of a downturn as some others. But yeah.
So with a lot of mortgage brokers struggling, are you a little bit worried about your job? Because if these brokers are not sending you loans, then how is your volume going to look this quarter and the early next quarter? And because you're the top, so if you're going to struggle, then imagine the other lenders, and then lenders are going out of business. Like, are you scared at all, or how does it look for Chris to finish off this last quarter and the beginning of next year?
Well, one, I never, and I brought this up before, I never used the word worried because I'm not worried, right? And like I've said, you can ask a lot of ex-girlfriends, they'll be like, man, he's he likes to stay even. And the reason why I say that is getting worried doesn't solve problems. Like never in the history of man has getting worried ever solved a problem for anybody. If anything, it confuses you. It blocks the solution, right? Concerned, I'll use the word concerned. Am I concerned? Sure, right? But with that concern comes thoughts, solutions. Chris, what can you do to get better? What can you do to help the other ones around you get better? That's really more what I focus on, right? So am I concerned? Absolutely. Anybody would be obtuse not to be concerned. But, at the end of the day, I just got to focus on what I always focus on is just, constantly originating with existing clients, originating new business, and just stay focused on that. I think if I stay focused on that, we'll be okay.
Do you need more mortgage brokers right now or more quality mortgage brokers?
You always need both, not all brokers are created equal. Not all loan officers are created equal. Not all AEs are created equal. So, you're always going to run the gamut of good to bad, but, the ones that, maybe just aren't as good at structuring, you just help a little bit more. Some of the ones that are really good at structuring, you just continue to help them stay good. So there's kind of that. I think right now, even in the good times, forget right now, you always want to constantly be adding, right? The good, bad, and the ugly. And, like I said, sometimes, you have to fire a client. Sometimes a client fires you. It's just how it goes. Sometimes you fire a client and then you end up reuniting with them and vice versa. So I think that's it. I don't really focus on, a specific, I do have targets that I'd like, but I think that's generally how I like to keep it.
I think when you're at the top, you're number one, and you've been in business for 20 years, and I'm sure people, well, I'm not sure, but you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you've had a lot of people that didn't like you, people that hated on you, people that wanted to see you down, people that have been waiting for you to go down, people that make up stuff about you.
Absolutely.
Because I get the same shit, but you continue to stay, and you outlast everybody, and you stay there, and that I think is called reputation, because you have that reputation that you've been in this game for 20 years, you're always at the top, and you're letting your results speak for themselves. So when you do that, do you feel like reputation, because you're so busy and you're always at the top, I'm sure that you have a lot of business and it takes a lot of time. So how do you deal with being so busy and getting back to everybody on time and all of that? Because I'm sure it's a lot of pressure to continue to be there at the top.
I think, obviously, there'd be plenty of clients that'd be like, man, I sure wish he'd call me back a lot quicker. And it's true. But at the same time, they're always grateful when I do call back. And I'm grateful for the fact that they even call me to give me an opportunity to call them back, right? Like I said, I just really focus on building really, really good, solid, strong relationships. I mean, that's just really the focus. And that's really the key to sales, is really fostering relationships. And you and I have talked about this. There's a lot of people that are transaction focused, right? And I think you could have some success being transaction focused, right? I like to be relationship focused, right? And I think that's really what's made the difference. Is I've been given the opportunity by a lot of amazing clients, you and your team in particular, right, that have given me the opportunity to earn their business and foster those relationships.
Are we your favorite broker?
Yeah, you're my favorite broker. Yeah, every office I go into is my favorite broker.
So I got to ask you this question. You don't have to answer me, but are we one of your top brokers? Your top broker?
Absolutely, yeah, one of my top brokers. Absolutely, yeah, top broker.
And if we're one of the top or the top, we'll leave it in the air unless you want to say it. And you're the top AE in the nation, so I think it's like that's why we make a power business club.
Yeah, it's a good match. It's a good match because kind of like what you were talking about a couple of minutes ago. Like you hear all kinds of things about Albert. I hear good things, and I hear bad things, right? And I'm sure same could be said for me, right? But at the end of the day, you really just kind of focus on the goal. Like we're all guilty of gossiping, right? Everybody gossips, right? We're all guilty of it, all of us. But at the end of the day, it's just like, well, I worry about the opinions of the people that are close to me. Those are really the opinions that I concerned with. People that don't really know me, they're going to say whatever, and that's fine too. It just really doesn't bother me. I've got a job to do, and, like I said, I just really focus on maintaining the relationships and building them and keep them going,
Yeah. Give me your take on this, Chris, really quick. We're going to wrap it up.
Sure.
But on the burning your bridges and relationships, we touched on relationships and also burning your bridges. Like, I know how valuable you are, and I think you know how valuable I am.
Likewise.
So we keep this tight relationship because I know, like, hey, look, Chris, I know he's going to deliver. And, Albert's going to deliver. And sometimes it's not going to be smooth every time.
Correct.
But I know that you have my back and that you have my back, and I know that, hey, you know what? If I'm gonna work with Chris, I know that he's gonna deliver, and I'm gonna protect my relationship with Chris, and I'll never burn my bridge with somebody like Chris, because if I do, it's more harmful to the person that does that. Because why would you want to burn a bridge from somebody that's that powerful? Because I know that if I have a loan that needs a little bit more structuring, it needs more somebody that has a great mind, because sometimes there's loans that some LOs with no experience, they just don't know how to structure it to make it work. But I know that with you, sometimes I'm like, hey, Chris, you know what? I have this loan, and then maybe it's a lot of co-borrowers, maybe somebody has a special scenario, like it could be many scenarios, but you always help us, and especially some of our new guys that need help, you always take the time to help them. And I think that goes a long way, because I know, like, hey, you know what? I know that Chris is going to have our back, and he's going to be available for our new loan officers. I'm just using that as an example. But then sometimes, let's just say a new loan officer, then they start kind of talking shit, or they start blaming, or they're like, hey man, like Chris didn't respond to me on time, but you always deliver. So my point is that I understand how valuable it is to protect your relationship, because at the end, it's gonna work. And I don't know if I make sense. I kind of got into it too big, but what is your take on the relationship and on burning your bridges?
So I have a really, really dear friend, and he's a rabbi. He's a judge in the rabbinical court, and he told me one time, and imagine this in a heavy Israeli accent, but he's like, as a judge, I'm in the business to disappoint people. And when he said that, like this light bulb went on, and unfortunately, we are in the business to disappoint people. That's not our goal, but it's going to happen. Yeah. Right? It's just going to happen, and you accept it. And the good relationships that I've built, I've disappointed those clients before, and sometimes disappoint me. But if you're a bigger picture person, you get past that, because you see really the true value of the relationship. Yeah. Right? Now, there might be that person who they don't see that. So when something doesn't go the right way, or they don't get the phone call return at the exact moment, well, again, remember we talked about firing clients. Well, hey, that happens, right? And I think I've been so successful because I have specific types of clients, right? Yeah. And they know the value in me, and I see the value in them, and that's really where it's just been a good fit. So I think that's the best way I can answer that.
Yeah, and also very important, I think there's always two sides of the story.
Sure.
Because sometimes I'll get like, hey, you know what? This happened with this loan, and I have it with X, with Chris or with another rep. And then I know that when I hear those things, I'm like, okay, wait, let me call Chris. He's my buddy, close buddy, number one. Let me call him, and then and then you'll give me the other side of the story. So I think there's always two sides of the story, and it's important to.
I think sometimes when people tell stories, they tell it from an emotional point of view, right?
Yeah.
And they're panicked, and they're this and they're that, and look, man, loans is part science and it's part art, right? And sometimes things come up. Underwriters aren't perfect. Loan officers aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. And things happen, right? And I just really focus on let's just get the thing closed. Let's figure it out and work it out and get it through, right? I think it's a lot easier for people to point the finger at others than, you know what I mean, to put the thumb back at themselves. And that's really what I kind of think. And yeah, like, sometimes they get emotional and they just, hey man, look at what you did. Every time I've ever gotten myself in a jam or I'm in a bad situation, at the moment I might spend 60 seconds blaming somebody else. But at the end of the day, when I clear my head, every jam, 98% of them I've ever been in was because of my own fault. It's because of something that maybe I procrastinated, maybe I didn't do, right? And I think people should maybe take a little bit more onus in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So two more things to close out, Chris. So we had a conversation. You told me that your last quarter, this quarter, it's going to be even better than last quarter.
Correct.
And then the first quarter of next year, it's going to be good too. Is there a reason why it's going to be good for you?
It's going to be good. I mean, maybe from a volume standpoint, it might not be good, but I know it's going to be great. It's going to be good because of the effort that I'm going to put in. Like, I guarantee you that. Like, it will be slower because the market's going to dictate it, but the market will not dictate my effort.
Yeah.
That much I can tell you. The market will not.
Because you could control that.
I could control that. I could control what time I get out of bed. I could control how many hours I work, how quickly I return the calls, how many calls I make out, et cetera, et cetera. How effective of a leader I want to be. I could control that. If rates jump up to 7, 8, 9%, I can't control that. So if I can't control it, I don't really focus on it. It doesn't mean I don't pay attention to it, but really at the end of the day, I can't control it. I can only work within it, right? So again, I treat rates the same way that I treated dinner as a kid, or at least the way I was treated. We weren't asked what we wanted for dinner,
Yeah.
My grandparents, they just put dinner out, and if either eat it or don't. If not, we'll see you at breakfast.
Yeah. And obviously, you guys aren't like downsizing or laying off staff. You guys are.
No, I've been fortunate. I haven't had to lay anybody off. I haven't had to ask anybody to take a pay cut. Like, I've been really, really fortunate, and I take my team's jobs really seriously. And I told them this at the beginning of August, and I have meetings with my team every Monday at 10 a.m. And I told them, I said, I've been able to accomplish a lot of good things in this industry, but if I could get through this year without having to lay anybody off, without having to ask anybody to take a pay cut, to me, that'll be the greatest accomplishment I've done so far in these 20 years. And that's really my goal, and that's what I'm shooting for. So if it takes being out in the field 4 days a week, if it takes 16, 17-hour days, well, it's something I haven't done before, and that's totally fine with me.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and I really respect that, and it's huge. There's not a lot of people that think like that. And one last question, Chris, on the rates. Mm-hmm. Where do you see I've heard from powerful influencers on social media that the rates are going to go up to 10%. I've heard some that have said they can go up, that they're going to start coming down towards the end of this year. What is your take on rates? And
I say it respectfully to anybody who's saying that rates are going down at the end of this year. You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention, right? There's no way that the Fed, right, is going to make the statements they made in Jackson Hole last month, the statements they made yesterday, right, and then all of a sudden reverse course, right? Because then everybody would lose faith in what the Fed says, right? That's one. Two, you're obviously not paying attention to inflation. You're not paying attention to what's going on in the economy domestically. You're not paying attention to what's going on in the economies in Europe, in China. There's a lot of problems, right? If you think inflation bad's here, look at Great Britain. It's terrible. We all know winter's coming up. It gets cold in Europe. Russia's cut off that pipeline. Those fuel prices are going to go through the roof, right? We've got some serious challenges, right? Unemployment is still stubbornly low, right? Inflation is still stubbornly high. So anybody who's thinking that rates are going to magically get better by the end of the year, again, you're just not paying attention, right? And I'm not making this up. I'm not pretending I'm smarter than anybody else, right? But I am smart enough to listen to people that are smarter than me, right? And this is what everybody's saying. Now, listen, I wish I could say, shoot, don't worry about it. December 14th, rates are coming down. It's not going to happen. Just anybody just replay what Powell said yesterday. It's not going to happen. He gave zero indication that'll happen. I don't think that rates will go down in the first quarter of 2023. Maybe, hopefully, maybe. hopefully, we might see rates drop in the second quarter of 2023, but it's a double-edged sword. Why is it a double-edged sword? So let's say rates go down, we get a mini refi boom. Somebody you gave a 6.5 to today, maybe you can get him or her down to a 6% of 5.75. Okay, fine, so be it. But if the Fed is lowering rates, it's because we're in a recession, right? So again, it's a double-edged sword, right? We need to get unemployment up, right? I know it sounds crazy, but that's just what has to happen. So again, it's not going to happen. It's just not.
So you're what I get the message out of this this hour that we spend is like tough times are coming, but tough people are made during tough times.
Absolutely.
And also, if you're a realtor and you're trying to sell homes or list a home, and these homeowners refinance to 2.5% or 3% last year, or in the beginning of the year or last year, and now they sell their home to buy another house, they're not going to be able to buy a house better because now they're going to have to get a 6% rate, or in the six-ish area,
if not higher. Yeah.
So now these sellers are thinking like, wait, what do I do? Because if I sell, I get money, but what am I going to buy? I'm going to have to get something less because the rate's going to get higher, and I'm not going to be able to get something better. So the realtors also have it hard in getting listings. And then if somebody wants to buy a house, people are like, wait, why am I going to buy right now when prices are high and the rates are high? Why don't I just wait till prices drop or rates drop? So realtors have it really hard too. Do you have any advice for realtors? And what is your take on realtors right now?
About 6 weeks ago, somebody said to me, you got to tell people, you marry the house and date the rate, right? And I was like, that's kind of funny. And then like now 6 weeks later, I'm like, man, if I hear one more person say, you know what I mean? Marry the house and date the rate. You know what I mean? If I hear it one more time, right? So, I don't think the advice would change for anybody. Like, if you're a realtor out there right now, like, man, you're just going to have to work that much harder. And you are going to have to accept that, man, originations, your listings are if you're a buyer's agent, are going to be lower. You got to accept that because that's what the numbers are going to dictate, right? Fair or not, it is what it is. The best way to spot a liar in the real estate and mortgage industry right now is ask them, hey, are you just as busy today as you were 6 months ago or a year ago? If they answer yes, they're a liar, right? So it's just like what I said, stay consistent to what you've always been doing, right? And focus on the areas where you are strong already, and focus on the areas as well that where you're weak and you could try to get better at, right? There really isn't any magic bullet right now, any silver bullet, that is. There isn't one, right? With the exception of just within your own self. Just continue to keep your legs moving. Just imagine, if you will, if you were on a sinking ship, which we all kind of are right now, and the ship is underwater and there's that huge suction. Well, you got to keep those legs moving and keep pushing towards the top, right? And that's the kind of same thing where we're at right now. It's going to be tough. I always talk about this, whenever, and I learned this when I first got in industry. Ask for the business, listen to the objection, soften the objection, overcome the objection, right? And you're going to get some objections right now that you probably haven't heard in 2 or 3 years, or maybe you've never heard ever. Or when you get that objection and you're not able to overcome it, write it down. Maybe when you're driving home from work that night, or you're in the shower, you're eating Raisin Bran for breakfast or whatever, keep playing it in your head. And when you think about something that you could say next time you hear an objection similar to that, it's not going to be verbatim, right? Write it down.
Yeah.
Make it your own. And then next time you hear something, right, an objection that you weren't able to overcome previously, you'll have something to say to soften it and keep that conversation going and keep pushing that sale forward.
So what do you say? People right now have to really develop selling skills. They have to be better sellers.
I never understood that. When people were saying, some loan officers, for instance, or brokers were like, man, I got to start, I got to start going to open houses. I got to start prospecting. It's like, motherfucker, that was your job the whole time. Like, when did that stop? Right. And what happened was the last couple of years, people got soft, right? Because you didn't have to sell anybody. Yeah. Telling ain't selling. you don't need to sell a 2.75 interest rate to somebody. It sells itself, right? 6%, a 7%, now you're selling, right? And so I think a lot of people, you know what I mean? Not a lot of people, but yeah, maybe a lot of people, they forgot that skill, right? They forgot how to sell, right? You should be prospecting. Even when times are great, you should always be adding to your book of business, right? You know what I mean? Don't rest on your laurels, right? And again, this is a good wake-up call for everybody, for you, for me, for that realtor, for that loan officer, right? But you should never stop, right? So you should always focus on becoming a better salesperson, right? You know, like, you know, a lot of people, you know, and I'll bring up athletes, for instance, right? Like, you know, Kobe Bryant. Some people, you know, will paint him on the wall or put up inspirational quotes on social media. I'm not one of those. I love Kobe, but I'm not one of those guys. I'm not falling in love with anybody like that, right? But his work ethic, I do respect. And there was never a point, whether it's Kobe Bryant, whether it's a Tom Brady, whether it's a Serena Williams, where they stopped trying to get better. Like never, it never happened.
Yeah.
They never stopped trying to get better. You never stopped trying to get better. I never stopped trying to get better. And so that's really the key, guys, is you should never stop. If you're doing great, there's still holes there, right? I'm doing great, there's still holes, right? Sometimes I could go home at the end of the day and just be like, man, you just really sucked in this area today, right? And then the next day could come and I might make that same mistake again. Man, like, bro, like you missed it. Like you've done this 2 days in a row. And then maybe on that third day, like I catch it and it's like, no, man, I got to make sure my focus today is not make this mistake again, right? And so I really think that a lot of people out there, whether you're a realtor, whether you're a loan officer, et cetera, like why are you stopped trying to get better, right? Whether it's a good time or a bad time.
You don't think that has to do with like strong company culture and then they're being in the right environment also?
I do. You know the expression, tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are, right? We've all heard that. I'm sure, your parents, each one of us, our parents told us that once or twice, you know what I mean, in our lives growing up. And I think that the culture that you're around is important, right? You've got to be around like-minded people. I talk about this, when I got in the mortgage industry and I started to find some success, I had to cut some friends out of my life, right? Not because they were bad people, or not because I thought I was better than them or anything like that. I wasn't getting any value out of them, and thus I couldn't give them any value in return, right? So, right now, remember we were at dinner a couple months ago. It was on a Sunday, we were at dinner, and I was saying right now, we're going to see a lot of jealousy and more gossip setting in. Because when everybody was busy and slammed, right? Yeah. You're too busy to look at what's on the other person's plate and vice versa. Because you got a full plate, you got plenty of food, you got a bountiful plate of food, right? But as we get to times like this, and people have less food on their plate, and some people have no food on their plate, well, now you got time to look at that other person. Well, what do they have? Well, why do they have it? And a lot of people, instead of saying, well, the reason why they have food on their plate and I don't, right? A lot of people aren't capable of being like, man, I'm fucking up. Yeah. I'm doing something wrong. They'll start talking, well, they only have that because of this, and they only have that because of that, right? And the strong ones are just going to stay focused on the plate in front of them and just be like, man, I got to work on adding more food or maintaining the food I have. So, that's that. And we're going to see a lot of that set in. It sets in right now, and, and that's okay. But again, at the end of the day, just stay focused on you and what you could do and how you could make yourself better. And not in that cliche way. Everyone's always like, oh, you got to get better. They have those stupid inspirational posters, lying around or whatever. I'm literally talking about, man, like you should always be focusing on trying to make yourself better, right?
Yeah. How do you deal with betrayals?
You just...
Because being number one for so long, at the top, because you're number one or number two, it's the same thing. Number one, number two is the same thing. But you've always been there, and last 4 years you've been number one. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are also jealous in your space, and I'm sure in 20 years of being at the top, you've had some betrayals.
You just like anything in life, anything that good that happens, you take lessons. Anything that bad that happens, what I've learned, especially over the past 2 years is I've cut down the circle even smaller, right? Sadly to say, everyone could say this, everyone has a lot of friends, right? But very few people have true friends, right? And again, I'm not saying that in a bad way or a negative way, because, at the end of the day, keep your circle small, and not like, again, people put these stupid posts, I keep my circle small and this and that. I'm not talking about that. But, I think as those betrayals happen, it's helped me become better at choosing friends, right? Yeah. And like I said, I could put the blame on that person or this or that, but really at the end of the day, who chose him as a friend?
Yeah.
I did, right? So, when I'm done being upset at that person or hurt by that person or disappointed, I could look back and reflect and be like, man, that was always a wolf. You know what I mean? You just weren't paying attention. But now, I should be thankful because now I've learned. And so when a person like that starts to come to my life again, I have that much more insight and foresight, and I could be like, no, I've met that person before. Maybe not exactly like them, but I've met them, and yeah, I'm going to keep them at an arm's length distance.
What about when you have somebody, though, that was so close to you and you thought they were going to be there forever? Have you ever had like a big surprise?
Yeah. I've had some good surprises, yeah.
Because sometimes it takes a lot of years, right, to find out?
It does, yeah, it does, and again, I just go back to what I said, at the end of the day, when I'm done being upset or hurt or whatever, I just look back at what I've learned, and it's like, okay, I need to be more mindful of that,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's really kind of it.
Well, Chris, it was a pleasure having you. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Thank you so much. And one last thing before we cut it off. What is one thing that nobody knows about you? Like one short story that nobody knows about you, that somebody that's going to listen to this is going to be like, damn, I didn't know that about Chris.
I don't have any interesting stories.
Any secrets?
I'm a pretty private person, so yeah, there's a lot of secrets. Yeah. A lot of secrets. Yeah. There's a lot of secrets.
So nothing you want to share?
Nothing I want to share. But, if somebody wants to, take me out, buy me a drink, you know what I mean? I'll share a secret, over a vodka tonic. Sure, why not?
Well, we have a bar right here.
Okay, then I can share a secret. Yeah.
All right. So I know. So Chris, you could follow him on my social media, the Albert Preciado. I'll tag him. I'll tag him. Post pictures about him, videos. Other than that, if people want to reach you, Chris, where can people reach you? If it's a new broker that wants to do business with you, or anybody that wants to reach you, where can they reach you at?
The old-fashioned way, 818-926-7078, 818-926-7078.
And you answer any phone calls?
It's hard to answer because I'm always on the phone, but you will definitely get a return call. I don't listen to voicemails. I'll be very honest. To send me a quick text message, I really think voicemails are going to be like fax machines in a few more years. So my voicemail box is full. So just shoot me a quick text.
You might have some ladies hitting you up with those pretty blue eyes.
Yeah, and again, to those women,
just give your phone out.
Just shoot me a text message. I'll call you back. I promise you. I might call you back a little bit quicker. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of the case.
Brother, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Likewise, man. Take care.